is just Om. So take a deep breath, relax, and then you say, Oh. While you are intoning that sound, I want you to also be mindful of how it sounds, how it feels, how your lips feel, your throat, the rest of your body. Now, it's part of a meditation, so I don't want you to get hung up on it, but I want you to try and expand your awareness to include that experience. What are you feeling, Shannon? Don't think.
Oh, peacefulness. I like the sound. I like the way it resonated. I've never done that before. I've never done this before. So, yeah.
And how did that resonation feel?
It's like vibration.
Good. Excellent. And Reverend Thomas, I'm sure you've done this experiment several times in the past. So describe your experience.
The Om in the Eastern philosophies is the name of the creative force or God, and it's oversimplified with the OM spelling or even the OHM. It's in the way the adepts use it. There are multiple sounds within that oming, and for me, in practicing that, it's kind of organic, kind of natural to begin to find those nuances when you're oming. And I don't feel that this one thing we just did was much of a representation of that. It's been a while since I've done this. It's a good reminder to do it. It's a powerful, powerful thing. But what this simple demonstration did for me this time was to bring me immediately to a very quiet place of stillness, which can sometimes take some work to get to, but that's a shortcut to get there, and that's being the place of nothingness where you're totally open is where we're available for the greater inspirations. It's a nice reminder to share that with us, Reverend Philip. Thank you.
So this is just a way of purification. And Reverend Thomas is correct. OM is simplified. Typically, when you read it in the deeper spiritual teachings, AUM. And the way you pronounce it properly, well, I shouldn't say properly, but the way you pronounce it is you pronounce each letter. And you get those different tones with that. And that vibration, you feel that vibration begin with your lips, and then the roof of your mouth, and then your tongue, and then it just slowly spreads out. It's like when you meditate, when you feel this tingling sensation, this rain that comes down upon your crown chakra here, and it just moves in. It's the same thing.
Reverend Philip, I'm going to say something. As long as we're talking about this, is something I know something about. So it's been the last 40, 50 years doing it. And Reverend Thomas said is correct. I don't think people realize or know the magnitude of where I've been or what I've done. But I do, but nobody else does. You can't explain it to me, you can't put it into words. But I was right for meditation when I started. I was right for it, so it took 6 months for me to settle down, but when I did, I could close my eyes and think the mantra. I would actually turn my body to stone. That went on for 25 years. I could do that. One time, you know, the two fields of life, absolute and relative. The mantra started thinking itself. I was not thinking, I was observing it. And what you're saying is correct. It took me down and I went out of the relative field into the absolute. And I was there for about 15 minutes. That is when your breathing stops, your heart stops, your body reaches a state of no decay. When I came out of it, I knew what it was like to be returned to your original self. Okay. And I can still remember what it sounded like as it took me down. I swear to God, I was not thinking, I was just observing. And it was those multiple vibrations. For me, it came out more like OMG. It contained everything. You know, I can talk about it all you want, but it's difficult to put it into words. But that was the deepest I ever wanted.
Absolutely.
So after that, I know what's out there, I know what's in here, but I'm disappointed in the fact that I can't relay that more to other people and I can't live it. Because I've read this too, that you can go back to your original self, but it won't last. On this field, in this earth, it will fade. Experiences I've had lasted 3 days. And then it was over. One time I had one that lasted 2 weeks, where I was in a higher state of consciousness. Unbelievable. But you can't hang on to it. And it's disappointing for me. We all want to walk around on Jesus Christ, but we're that way. It didn't work.
Well, he had his moments. He wasn't in it
Yeah,
all the
that's
time.
true. And before I quit talking, I want to say one thing about the vibration, something that's very easy. Take the tip of your tongue and put it up on the palate of your mouth, like the roof of your mouth. Tip of your tongue. And move it around. Move your tip of your tongue around. You can contact it, you can be close to it. Experiment with that and the vibration go from the pineal gland to the pituitary gland. You're stimulating that. Third eye. I've had third eye just pop open. I know what it's like. Most of my visions and then come on the third eye that popped open. And that's one way to facilitate it.
And stimulating the pineal gland stimulates the restorative properties of the Bible or the body, the natural restorative properties. And I seem to recall reading an exercise similar to that when I was reading, I think the author's name was Stein. And it was a very small book on Reiki. And it was one of the exercises, I believe.
Oh, I know what you're talking
Described. Okay.
I've got a book. And it goes against a lot of the Reiki principles. And Reiki people were not happy when she published that because she told secrets. She put it in print. And right over there at that bookstore, right over there, Crystal Connection, there was a Reiki person, if you think they're all gods, because they're not all gods, came in there, bought all the books she had, took them out in front, stopped on them, and set them on fire. And I forget the lady's name, you know who it is. She said to her, go ahead, I'll just buy them all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
So that's this whole process. Now let's talk about the sacrifice. Yeah, Beth's over here making this icky face. But I'll tell you, the interesting thing about the sacrifice, I didn't know this. I didn't catch on to this until I read through this. a few times. Now, typically, through symbolism, the goat represents what? Do you two remember? We heap all of our misgivings upon the goat.
The scapegoat.
Ah, I'm getting to that. That was a very important role, scapegoat. But when we read in this, when we read about the goat, the ram, sheep, lamb, they're all representing the same thing. They're all actually of the same family as well. So they figure prominently, not only in traditional religion, but also in the pagan practices as well. So as was presented here, 2 goats were presented and lots were cast. One lot was for Yah-weh and the other lot for the scapegoat. Whichever goat Yahweh's lot fell upon was reserved for the sacrifice, which represented purification. And this is what Moses and Aaron and anybody else who was going in there, because I think Miriam joined them a few times as well. They had to do this. So the goat receiving the scapegoat's lot was released into the wild as an atonement. So what are your thoughts about that, Beth? What does that strike you as? Being released as an atonement.
Yeah, I'm not sure I get that. Atonement, I'm sorry. Too bad, too sad. Trying to do. Poor little goat's gonna get eaten fast, not with this lot, not intended to.
Not the scapegoat.
If he's released into the wild, if he's been raised in a herd and has been tended by a goat herder in a Great Pyrenees dog, yeah, he's gonna be eaten.
Yeah, they tend to follow habits. They'll go right back to the flock.
Well then, okay, then I misunderstood being released into the wild.
Well,
He ends up back in the.
it would be released into the wild, but let's not get literal with this.
Yeah.
Remember, just about everything with the Bible has some kind of symbolic significance. So
An atonement for the.
you're overthinking it.
I know I am.
You're overthinking it. So we'll move on to someone else here. How about you, Reverend Thomas? What are your thoughts? I see you smiling. I hope you don't give it away, but you might.
I won't give it away. I'm just listening. I'm interested in where you're going with this because I'm not sure. So I'm ready to learn something. Thank you.
So the scapegoat represented a means of reparations. I looked up atonement just to make sure I wasn't misapplying what it was intended to say. And atonement is to make reparations. So let's look at this idea of 2 goats that we heap all of our misgivings upon. One is sacrificed. The other one represents our ability to atone, or potential atonement, or what do I want to say? Oh, I don't know. I'll forget what I want to say. So one gets us in the door. The sacrifice gets us in the door. Okay, I am clean. I am cleansed. I'm purified. I stand before the chair of the tabernacle, the Holy of Holies, and I'm gazing upon it, awaiting Yahweh to give a sign. However, I've also made a promise. The scapegoat that was released for atonement to go into the wild means that I have to make good on what I did. We can say, will you forgive me? That gets the door open, but we've still got the work that's still attached to it. short-term, long-term. Now, here's another interesting application for this. They tell us, or we are taught, that Jesus died for our sins. He was the lamb that was sacrificed. So based on what we have right here, what does that tell me?
Most of us are scapegoats.
Exactly. Wow. Exactly. We're all scapegoats. Jesus got to the door. He can open the door for us. He's got it unlocked. But we have to do our part to get there. We have to get to the door. We can't just say, oh, I believe Jesus Christ and we're at the door. Not according to this. It doesn't work that way. According to this. Now, I could be wrong. Most people will tell me I'm wrong because I'm a know-it-all. However, this makes more sense than everything else that was taught. Because one of the things I have said before is traditional religion tends to take responsibility away from us, accountability away from us. I mean, you watch the movies and the mobsters are all Catholics because they go to the priest and the priest says, you are absolved, do this, this, and this, and give you $300 and you're good to go. But it doesn't work that way. So this is what I came with this. This is what I got out of this. So do you have any thoughts you would like to add, Reverend Thomas?
I like it. It's it all of that fits together very nicely, and it's a I think a very interesting, very valid way of looking at that, and it really puts the New Testament, especially, into the proper perspective. So, thank you for presenting that.
Thank you. What are your thoughts, Pat?
This was interesting. You know me in symbolism. You know, I get caught up in that. So like, I'd like to hear more in future lessons, in future classes.
No, I'll do my best. I'll do my best. How about you, Sharon? Any thoughts you'd like to add?
It all kind of fit in at the end when you finally said about the scapegoats and having to do our part. And it sort of reminds me of what we talked about earlier when we were talking about, the devil made you do it kind of thing that we were kind of talking about earlier. So kind of all tied in with that. And but you have to own it. You gotta own it. You can't blame somebody else. Not that those decisions are easy to do, depending on the situation, but you have to say, okay, so this is right, we need to go with this and try to make it. I'm reminded of the movie Atonement. I don't know if you ever saw that movie. Oh my gosh. I get chills just, it's for Karen Knightley, it's a British drama. It's hard to watch. But it's this whole thing about somebody going through their life and trying to make reparations for a mistake that made as a child. That was devastating. So it just made me think of that movie, and it's really difficult. But it can take, my point being, it can take a whole lifetime.
Exactly.
More to accept it, to move on from it. So, yeah,
Exactly.
that's what I thought of was really thinking about it.
One reason I can seem to be so conflicted and frustrated is because I don't feel like I can really live the experiences that I had, but what I do have is a memory of what it's like to be totally returned to your original pristine self. I remember what it's like. I remember the 3 days I walked around enlightened, the 2 weeks I walked around enlightened. And the way you see things are just totally different than the way we do here. As corny as it sounds, you know, some way I could have said my heart was bursting with love for everybody. I could see people with their faults and problems, but they were not affecting me, and the heart of love overrode everything. We are one. Remember what I was saying, these are all my people,
Exactly.
right there. So while I feel like I can't live it every day, I have a memory of what it's like to be that way, and I know how it is when you return to your original self.
It's a letdown.
Yes, yes. And it's a constant frustration. You know, when you know these things, you can't explain it to anybody.
Transcendentalism. It's an article I read a short time ago. Well, I've got the article, so I read it a short time ago. I read my notes. And exactly what Ken was describing with that is they call it transcendental meditation. And what happens is the experience that he had, the only time we experience that level of consciousness, the level of awareness, we get it in glimpses. Because the way they describe it, the way the practitioners describe it to the scientist, was that when you realize that you're there, you're not. And the most difficult thing is that holding on to it requires that you recognize it. And as soon as you recognize it, it's no longer there. Therein lies the difficulty. Again, another example of Gospel of Thomas, where Christ says, become passersby, or bring what is within without. Make the inward the outward. And the idea there is you don't recognize it, you just exist in it. And that's what Ken is trying to describe. The only thing you can do is to exist in it, and we exist in it in brief moments. Jesus existed in it in brief moments. When he taught, when he was teaching the people, and they saw the glory of God around him, they saw this halo, this light around either his head or his body. I feel that sensation when I'm teaching. I feel that connection. I just ease into it, and then I move through it. And then when I recognize why, by checking the time or asking a question, I've stepped out of it.
I think that's why the 10 teachers kept asking you, was it easy? Was it easy? And that's just the epiphany I just had just a few weeks ago that I was trying to meditate again, and I can't get enough on it. Yeah, it was easy, and I could tell the difference. But for one thing, you've given up everything. You've given up trying. You've given up trying. And you're just existing, and you're just seeing it the way it is, and you're left unconflicted. It's hard to put into words. That's the easy part, and it is easy.
So I want to thank all of you for sharing your thoughts with me and for allowing me to share this with you. Thank you very much.